Alright, welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about Trickster's Queen by Tamora Pierce. So, some of my favorite books are not technically good books. I'm a firm believer in the idea that sometimes reading can and should be like candy. It should be sweet, fun, ethereal, and without any deeper merit or meaning. True escapist stories. And in my opinion, the best books for this are often ones that are just technically not good. They are cliche, they are problematic, they are stupid, they do not challenge us, and often they are just plain flawed. On that note, Trickster's Queen! So this book continues the story from Trickster's Choice, which I reviewed a couple of months ago. See the review over here. It follows Allie, who is the daughter of the Spy Master of Tortall. She is in a completely separate kingdom called the Copper Isles, and through a series of divine interferences and honestly a bit of luck, she ends up embroiled in this plot to replace the current terrible, awful, no good, very bad monarchs with a new monarch, specifically a queen, and a queen who will have the blood of both the colonizing Luorans and the original inhabitants of the islands, the Raka. And now that Allie and the hopeful queen, though the queen herself, the girl does not know she's going to be queen yet, now that they're back in the capital, the plot really kicks into high gear. By the end of summer, they will either have a new queen on the throne, or they'll all be dead. So in case you cannot guess from that intro, I would say that this is not a good book. It doesn't have carefully interwoven plots, it's not very deep, it doesn't have lyrical language, it's not super metaphorical or meaningful, but it is an enjoyable book. I didn't want to put it down. I thought about it when I wasn't reading, and yeah, I will admit some of the times I was thinking about, wow, that was a stupid moment, but most of the time I was just thinking about the characters and wondering what they would do next. I enjoyed reading this book. And a hell of a lot of the problems that I had with this book are the same ones that I talked about in the previous review, the review of Trickster's Choice. And they're all still present here. Like, there's no avoiding the fact that this book comes across as sort of fan-fiction-y. It's got way too many, way too special characters. Allie as a heroine is honestly too good at everything to be completely likable, and also she's too good at everything for there to be any real serious stakes for a lot of it. Now, I will say that some of this is mitigated, partially because there are just a lot less character intros in this book, but that means that there were less super duper special, incredibly special, oh my god, so special characters to meet, so it felt a little bit less artificial. But on the other side of that, yeah, there are new problems. One of my biggest new problems with this book is character shorthand. So character shorthand can be incredibly useful for all forms of fiction. Movies, TV, books, you'll see it everywhere. And it comes down to the fact that sometimes authors don't have time to explain in detail who a character is. Often, these characters are meant to be flat characters, and so you don't want to waste words filling in, like, in-depth background and character descriptions. So, authors will use one quick fact, an image, or phrasing to give the readers just enough of an idea of who we're working with. Now, quite often, these are really cliché. Things like having your villain kick a puppy to show us how evil he is, or having a girl making a flower crown to show off how beautifully innocent she is, or having a brat whine about telling his parents on you just to show that he is a spoiled brat. And none of that's a problem. The thing about cliches is they give you a lot more information than is technically in them because there's a lot of cultural meaning built on top of cliches. So personally, I think this can quite often be really, really useful. But on the other side of that, they need to be something believable for a human being to be doing in those situations, or they're going to stand out as clearly artificial. There's a scene very early on in this book where Allie is meeting some of the spies that she's been training all summer, and one of the girls is just doing a split in the middle of a meeting room, surrounded by chairs and other people meeting in a meeting room. And this is done because Tamora Pierce wants us to know that this character is flexible, fit, probably slightly sexualized, a female, but who people dismiss as an airhead, but she's probably smarter than she actually comes across as. That is what that cliche means. That's a lot of information that Pierce would have otherwise had to have Allie, like, just directly think about this character. So, yeah, it's useful. But on the other side, it's weird. It's a really rare situation where you can have a character just doing a split for no reason. Like, that character intro does work for Ty Lee in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but because we meet her at a circus, but in a relatively small, crowded meeting room, yeah, no. That was the most egregious failure of character shorthand, but it's not the only moment that I noticed exactly what Pierce was doing, and I was not feeling feelings of admiration that she did it smoothly. The other big problem that I have with this book was that Allie needed to be an intensely intelligent character for the story arc to work. She needs to be the kind of character that sees through everything and everyone. The character that thinks of plots that no one else in the world would ever think of. The character that is like 5 steps ahead of everyone and everything. And to do that, the author needed to be about 6 steps ahead of everyone and everything in her book. And I don't think she always is. Sometimes there are things that people are being super impressed that Allie figured out that I was a little bit like, yeah, no shit. Spoiler alert, there's a moment that's built up to throughout the entire book where Allie is stressing about, like, oh, how are her friends gonna react? How are her friends gonna react? How are her friends gonna react? They can't find out. They can't find out. When she finally reveals to them who she actually is. And in the end, they're just like, yeah, and that could have been punchy and funny, except for the fact that it was incredibly obvious that the characters were going to react that way. So it just made Allie look stupid for not realizing that of course her friends were going to be like, okay, you just fought a war with us, what's the point? Like, who cares where you're actually from? And there are other moments where, like, Allie is suggesting strategies to other members of the plot, and they're all so super impressed, like, oh my god, I never would have thought of poisoning the soldiers' food. Like, mind blown! And it's a super obvious idea. Which doesn't serve to make Allie look incredibly smart. It serves to make all the other characters look really stupid. Especially when they've been building this plot up for literally generations, and Allie shows up last minute and adds her 2 cents. And I know that a lot of this can be forgiven just because this is a young adult book. This book was written for children. But the reading level isn't low enough to make Allie's ideas seem genius. So I read somewhere years ago, I don't remember where, I don't remember who, I don't remember what book it was in, but I remember reading somewhere that an author cannot write a character who is smarter than they are. And I disagree with that. There are ways to write characters that are smarter than you are, but it is sometimes hard to manage. And on this particular occasion, I don't think that Tamora Pierce perfectly managed it. I also feel the progression of Allie's relationship with Nawat felt a little pressed. Like, it's not necessarily too fast. If anything, like, it's a good progression across time. But it felt like Pierce didn't trust us to see how the relationship was progressing. So every time that they interact at all, there's a moment with Allie thinking about how much she's changed in her feelings since the last time she saw him. There's even one point that Allie starts thinking about how she now sees Nawat as a man instead of just a crow that turned into a man. But that's a problem because, like, we never saw at any point where she didn't see him as a man. If anything, in the previous book, there were weird moments where she was like, oh, shit, this is weird. I've been thinking of you as a guy, and yeah, you're still sort of a crow. So in the end, it just felt like Pierce knew there needed to be progress, so she said there was progress. When it would have been perfectly fine for them just to have been in a perfectly content relationship that was gradually building subtly. I also have a minor quibble with the way the evil act of the god is handled, because, spoiler alert, the god does something bad. And I don't have a problem with the fact that the god did something bad. I'm actually impressed with the gumption Pierce showed in having a character that up until this point had been the fun, arrogant, and slightly unempathetic but fun trickster character, and showing him to suddenly be just downright horrific. But the problem I have with it is I'm not sure that Allie's relationship to him changes enough afterwards. She seems to be treating him exactly as she did before, And because of that, since she's the POV character, it feels like we're supposed to see him the same way we did before. And I don't know about everybody else who read this book, but I cannot. But none of that really decreased my general enjoyment of this book. Even when the plot is stupid, it's fun. The characters are likable. The bad guys are just bad enough that we don't feel guilty about enjoying watching them have a downfall. We get to have a happy ending, but there is enough sadness that it doesn't feel just hollow. There's a plot twist that I saw coming way back in the first book, but there is something comforting about seeing plot twists coming. You don't get stressed out by it. And unlike the first book, it didn't feel like Allie was infallible. She does mess up a couple of times, and that made her more enjoyable and more believable. Overall, I would say this is a fun book, though I'm still not sure I'd consider Tamora Pierce one of the greats among fantasy authors.